And joining me to talk about the race for 2016 is Republican strategist and CNN political commentator S.E. Cupp, along with Democratic strategist Steve McMahon. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Steve, I want to talk to you about this Clinton conundrum, the idea that a majority of voters pick her to be president, but also a majority find her not honest, not trustworthy. Look at this number right here. This is the top number, the honest and trustworthy, most people, yes 30, no 39%, no 53%, independents, yes 31%, no 61%. 61% of independent voters saying they do not find Clinton honest or trustworthy. She's going to have to turn that around, I think, right?
Yeah, and she will. I mean, one of the things that you're seeing in some of this polling right now is the country is already pretty polarized. Republicans are overwhelmingly represented in the untrustworthy, even Republican-leaning independents. But there's no question that the coverage of the email situation and some of the Clinton Foundation news that's been focused on lately is probably reflected in some of these numbers. But I expect that when you have a race against a Republican, that most people find the policies of that candidate fairly objectionable. It's going to look a lot different.
S.E., I want to ask you, the same poll shows that in head-to-head matchups, there are two candidates that come within striking distance of Hillary Clinton. Obviously, it's early yet. But they are Marco Rubio and Rand Paul, each one 4 points behind. Do you think there's something that they have? I mean, is it because they're both younger, fresher, newer? Yeah. Is that the reason?
I think so. And we've been hearing a lot from Marco Rubio and Rand Paul, which I think, you know, usually that is reflective in polls. I expect those numbers to shift over the next few weeks. I expect someone like Mike Huckabee's numbers to go down, Rick Santorum's numbers to go up as he gets more vocal. So, but that sounds about right. I think Marco Rubio is absolutely a rising star and a candidate to watch. Rand Paul is having a tough time right now, and I expect his numbers to drop as well. But they're the new upstarts. They're the fresh upstarts. Those are the people that Republicans are certainly watching to see, to see what they say on all of these issues going forward.
You know, they're occupying the space that Governor Walker was occupying a couple of months ago when he was the fresh new upstart. And the scrutiny will start to come and the attention comes, and you're already starting to see articles about Marco Rubio that aren't as flattering as the articles that you saw 6 or 8 months ago. And Rand Paul's going through it today, right now. In real time, his Republican opponents are beating him senseless on some comments that he made recently about the hawks in his party.
Blaming Republican hawks.
Yeah, but this is the point. All of the Republican contenders and would-be contenders are out answering questions, making news, and you see that reflected in the polls. Hillary Clinton's not really doing that, so her numbers stick.
Well, she's winning, though. I mean, there's an argument to be made that the strategy that the Clinton campaign is executing right now is working because there's not a Republican who's ahead of her in any poll that's been published at any time in the last year.
Does that mean that she just can refuse to have any serious, long interview or press conference until November?
No, and she won't, and she'll answer questions. But look, she believes, and her campaign believes, that this campaign should be about the voters and not the reporters who are covering it. And she'll answer the questions, but she's not there to answer reporters' questions. She's there to talk to voters. One of the things that people criticized her for last time when she cut herself off and walled herself off from not just the press but voters, and they're not going to make that mistake again.
Well, I don't think anyone's criticizing her for talking to voters, but it would be nice to have her.
Well, but before, though, Jake, it was a lot of speeches, it was a lot of big events behind a podium. She's now right in there.
I don't blame Hillary for the strategy. She's being rewarded for it. I blame members of the media for peddling her puff pieces while she refuses to talk to them.
I want to move on to some interesting news from today. Mother Jones magazine did a profile of Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, Democrat, who's challenging Hillary Clinton. And there was this essay he wrote when he was 30 years old in 1971. It's an old essay, but he writes, "A man goes home and masturbates his typical fantasy, a woman on her knees, a woman tied up, a woman abused. A woman enjoys intercourse with her man as she fantasizes about being raped by 3 men simultaneously." It goes on to talk about gender roles. It is very strange, and obviously there is a lot to object to in this, Steve.
There is, and I'm not going to defend it. I'll leave that to the Sanders campaign.
We have yet to get a response back, by the way.
I'm sure they'll say it was a long time ago.
It was.
He was 30.
30 years old.
And I'm sure they'll say that he was providing analysis and not his own views. But there's no question that this is going to be a challenge for them, although I will say it's going to be more relevant when he's more relevant. And right now, he's not very relevant, and probably this won't be either.
Let's talk. You want to talk about that?
Well, it's just so uncomfortable. I mean, it's a very uncomfortable moment. And
Yeah.
if George Bush's college grades were relevant, if Rand Paul's fraternity hijinks were relevant, if Bobby Jindal's graduate thesis was relevant, I think that there are some relevant questions to ask Bernie Sanders.
Which is why we're asking them right now and why we put them to...
I'm not saying they're irrelevant. I'm just saying right now, as a candidate, he's largely irrelevant, which means it's not going to get the same level of attention as George Bush as the nominee when people were questioning his college transcripts or other things.
I do want to ask you about Chris Christie today, the governor of New Jersey, not doing that great in polls right now, but still, I think, a relevant force. And he today basically said that the Common Core educational standards, federal educational standards, that he had supported, he now opposes. Obviously, this is something that will endear him to Republican base voters. Coincidence?
Right. No, you know what's amazing about this? It's made me think about your interview with him, where you asked him about some of his bad poll numbers and where he was and how this was an uphill battle. And you know what struck me is he seemed almost unfazed, right? He seemed very confident, very like, it's okay, I don't pay attention to the polls. Maybe that's because he had this in mind, that he was going to come out with this announcement, really sort of blow the field wide open, jab to Jeb Bush, who supports Common Core, and maybe create a whole new ballgame. Maybe had this in mind all along.
Interesting. S.C. Cupp, Steve McMahon, thank you both so much.